Hello, my name is Julian Bowrey. I'm Regional Manager for Innovate UK for this part of the world, and I'm going to talk you through in the next 10 or 15 minutes the support that's currently available to innovative companies through Innovate UK to support you both in the immediate Covid-19 lockdown crisis, but also hopefully into an expansive recovery once we're out of this particular phase of it. So for those of you who don't know, and hopefully most of you who've come along to these events in the past will know that Innovate UK is the UK's innovation agency, and we provide a combination of funding support through competitions, but also other support through business advice, providing connections between the right people to help your companies thrive and grow. So in the immediate aftermath to Covid-19, the lockdown, Innovate was involved in many of its areas of expertise. So we worked with Cabinet Office, NHS, places like Imperial and Cambridge, and with the Formula One sector to develop the ventilator challenge. We're also heavily involved in manufacturing of vaccines. And as many of you, again, will have seen the, I think, about 140 million that was announced last week to support the more rapid completion of the vaccine manufacturing facility outside Oxford, also heavily involved in testing and therapeutics. Some of you might be interested, there is a UKRI open call. So if you have any idea related to research and innovation, specifically around COVID, whether that's the therapeutics or the vaccines or data, anything like that, particularly related to COVID, then there is the UKRI open call. You might want to have a look at that. Pretty early on, we recognised that the innovation ecosystem that we're supporting is different to the other companies, or many of the other companies within the economy as a whole. Quite often you're still in pre-revenue mode, pre-profit mode, so that meant that some of the support that was available to other companies wouldn't have been available to you. So we argued with Bays and with Treasury that there should be a specific package to support innovative companies, and we were successful in that. So the components of that were, there was a £20 million de minimis call for ideas up to £175,000. We got over 8,000 applications through that, so the £20 million became £40 million, and we announced support for over 800 projects last week. On the 20th of April, £750 million of support was announced by the Business Secretary. That consists of a large component to support existing grant recipients. Like 2,500 companies are currently receiving Innovate UK grants, and there's £500 million ring-fenced to help those companies get over cash flow issues in particular. So 200 million, that is a brought forward of existing money, but we're going to pay in advance, things like that, for example. There's also £300 million in continuity loans and grants. I think the grants application closed a couple of days ago, but the loans is a rolling programme until, as the programme manager said, the money runs out. As well as supporting the existing community, though, we're also going to be running further open competitions. We anticipate supporting about 1,200 companies through the £191 million that we've got available for that. We've also increased the money available for EEN to provide extra business support to help companies through the immediate crisis and think about what the opportunities are going forward. And here's just a quick summary of the 750 million support package. And for those of you who are particularly interested in that and think you might be eligible for that, although hopefully you will have been contacted already, both by us and through your monitoring officer, I've provided a link there through to the relevant pages on gov.uk. Again, EEN, it's mostly going to be focused on companies who are already working with EEN, although we are anticipating some 1,000 new high growth clients, and that will include referrals from growth hubs and other organisations. And I guess other organisations will probably include the research and enterprise and innovation hubs at universities, although to be honest, I'm not quite sure about that. And we're working towards what is a fairly standard disaster recovery model now of hopefully we're out of the survive mode, we're well into stabilise, and we will be starting to think about, all of us, I'm sure, quite soon about getting into the grow phase so that we can begin to get back to business as usual. And that's very much the message I want to leave you with, is although what I've described is a relatively large sum of money, actually we're spending over £1 billion still on business as usual. So the main focus of our response to COVID, if you like, is to continue to do the things that we are doing, whether that is support for the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, support for SMART, the Open Programme, support for KTP. We have delayed some competitions and we've also extended some of the deadlines, but very much nothing has changed in respect of the priorities that we have and the support that we offer to businesses who are looking to innovate and grow. I would just flag, for example, on the ISCF, I think last time I looked, there are about 14 competitions open at the moment on our website. That's probably about 5 or 6 down from what it would usually be, but we did announce a couple of weeks ago a large Future Flight programme. So if you're interested in that side of innovation, all around systems that support the future of flight, whether that's aerospace or drones, I've read many a drone application in the last 2 or 3 weeks, then do take a look at that, as well as any of the other programs that interest you. The latest round of SMART funding closed 27th of May. I don't have any information yet about how many applications we actually received, but the new one, if it's not open now, will be open shortly, and we'll continue to roll that forward in the way that we have done for the last couple of years. And the money remains the same. There's £100 million in that pot to cover the whole year. So with that, I think we're going to move into questions at some stage. Apologies if that was a slightly staccato performance. I do love doing these things virtually, really. But thank you very much. I hope that was useful, and I look forward to the Q&A shortly. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, so as Benoit said, I'm here to, instead of him, to introduce Julian. He's here to answer questions. And also, I think Will Darler should be with us as well. Will, if you're around, then can you unmute yourself? And do you have a video? Or Will?
Switch my webcam on now, so I'm here.
You go then. Yeah. So if anybody's got questions after Julian's presentation, or if you want to ask questions to Will, Will is an academic from Leicester University, very used to Innovate UK funding. Maybe first of all, Will, if you want to give a few words about that.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm Will Darler. I'm a lecturer in marketing, although my background is in computer science and innovation. And I'm the knowledge exchange lead for the business school. So one of my jobs is to get businesses interested in working with the university, and also get university staff interested in working with businesses. So in the last few years, I've been talking to lots of different sized businesses and applied for different pots of funding for smaller projects and larger projects. We've got students working in industry at the Space Centre, for example. We've had projects at the Leicester Tigers basketball, as well as applying for bigger grants like knowledge transfer projects, which the Innovation Hub facilitates.
Okay, so in terms of questions, I've got a question from Andrew. I don't know, I think Will and Julian, I think you can see the questions yourself, but I'm going to just to read Andrew's question. Julian, has the application process been relaxed during the period, during this period, to make it easier to apply?
No, there's been well, there's been no change in the application process. We, as with all crises, we've suddenly found that actually what we think we could only do in 6 months, we can do in 3 weeks if we really pare it down. But no, the exam questions haven't changed. And, you know, certainly for all the open calls, then if anything, it's getting even more competitive because lots of people are applying. So no, there's you're not going to get any easier ride, I'm afraid. What we will do, hopefully, is get the answer out to you more quickly. But equally, you know, KTN, business as usual. So if you need that sort of support, our customer help desk is very busy. But that too, if you've got questions, put them through to the customer help desk and we'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Question from Russia. If it is very hard to get users experience or NPV by testing an innovation that belongs to AI and helps with COVID-19, do you think we can still apply? And then Russia says I didn't apply for the last entry in May, on May 27th, but hoping for the July entry.
So, shall I answer that one? So I don't really understand the question at the moment. What kind of funding is Russia looking to apply for?
So yeah, so maybe if Russia, if you can, of course you can hear us, if you can just reformulate maybe your question and make it a bit more concise so that we can respond to the question. And then in the meantime, I'm going to...
Smart entry funding, they've said.
Okay.
Could be an open grant
funding.
That could be smart funding, the open program.
Yeah. So Julian, I have a couple of questions about this smart grant as well, because I'm quite interested in it, and I'm sure some of the businesses I'm talking to might be interested in it. Can you tell us kind of, firstly, what sized projects have been funded in the past? Have there been various types of size, and could you give us examples of any of the types of projects that have successfully been funded for smart grants?
Goodness, I'm going to struggle with the latter one. On average, we probably give just over £100,000. So I mean, I think it varies quite a lot, but the average is about £100,000.
And does the business have to contribute monetarily or in kind, or what kind of contribution has to be made for that?
We expect there to be a contribution. It depends on the size of business. So if you're a large business, then it's 50% going down to, I think, 30% if you're an SME or a micro business. And there are separate rules for university contributions to that. I think that can be in kind, but you know, we do expect companies to put some skin in the game, because essentially what we're doing is helping companies de-risk an innovative idea that they want to take forward, rather than give people a pot of money to start something new, which they wouldn't do if we didn't give them that money. If you want to have a look, yeah, I mean, I'll have a look and I'll ping via Arno or whoever some examples of smart funding awards, maybe in the sort of business space you're interested in, Will. But there is also the transparency data for Innovate has a list of all the projects that we've funded since 2004. So if you can't wait for me to do a quick trawl of that, and you really want to have a look, then you can download and have a look at all the transparency data, which gives all the details of projects that we've funded.
Yeah, I just thought it might be very useful for Rasha as well to see an example of a few projects that perhaps are in his area, or her area. I'm not sure what area their research is in. There might be something similar to what they had in mind.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the other thing I would say is do make use of the KTN, both because the KTN will can support you in developing your grant application, but also are the people who know the sector far better than me and be able to say, you might think that's a great idea, but actually we know of 150 companies that are playing in exactly the same space. So maybe you need to think afresh. So make use of the KTN, both to develop that sort of what's the market like out there? Are you really innovative, as well as they can help you fill in the application form?
Yeah. So if Rasha's interested in pursuing it further, they could get in contact with the Innovation Hub, and they would put them in contact with our local knowledge transfer network representative who could help them more with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would go certainly talk to the Innovation Hub, but also the KTN. If you just Google Knowledge Transfer Network, the KTN is our national agency, and it does things by sector. So there will be. There is a AI special interest group that is facilitated by the KTN, who can help, and also just making the connections through that group is often really useful to people.
Yeah, and I've got to say, everyone that I've talked to from the Knowledge Transfer Network has been very helpful and very enthusiastic about all the different types of projects that they're involved in as well.
Yeah, they're all scarily bright and knowledgeable, has to be said.
So, listening to your, just a more general question for you, Julian, listening to your presentation, would you say that Innovate UK's mission and funding priorities have changed since COVID, or as a result of COVID-19?
No, I don't think they have changed. What happened is, as soon as COVID hit, we deployed the resources that we had both to support some of those immediate needs, like our connections with advanced manufacturing and F1, to respond and set up the ventilator challenge, to recognizing that a lot of the companies we support were in danger of going broke because they have cash flow problems, they're pre-profit, they're pre-revenue, their investors are walking away. So we argued with Bayes and Treasury that government needed a package beyond the standard industry package to provide better support. So that's what we tried to do. Otherwise, our priorities are exactly the same. They may change depending on what government decides to do around reorientating its priorities. But at the moment, it's very much business as usual until government says, we're piling into, creating a PPE manufacturing capacity in this country, and that's what we want to spend our money on. So it is business as usual.
Okay, thank you. Will?
Well, apart from wanting to know about the types of projects that are being funded, do you know any calls that are going to come up, or any focused interest areas that are going to come up over the next 6 months or so? Can we have a preview of anything?
It's still very much up for grabs. We don't even know within Innovate which programs are coming up. So there's a big shopping list of programs that will be launched at some stage, but that is increasingly dependent upon government priorities and on our own internal sort of prioritization for that. So no, I'm afraid not. All I can say is sign up to the email alerts from Innovate on gov.uk and keep an eye on what's happening. Also, KTN email alerts, and that's probably the best sources of intelligence I can give. And obviously, although some of these you might say don't have very long lead-in times, then we don't do something where we put something up on a Friday and then on the Monday we close it. So I know, I've been involved in recruitment processes where you do that so that only the people who know actually apply for the job. Slightly unethical, but that's the way it works. We don't do that. So there is always a lead in. We announce something, we have a briefing, that's an online briefing, then people have a time to register their interest, then they apply. So you'll always have plenty of time. And again, general advice would be, don't chase our funding. If you're working on something around green energy, then that's the narrative you want to develop. And at some stage, a funding opportunity will come up, whether it's from us or from someone else. You know, don't put all your eggs in. There's a particular Innovate funding call. We've got to get that, otherwise the business isn't going to work, because because it's competitive. Then that's a really high risk strategy for people to adopt. It's got to be driven by what you want to innovate and where you see the business opportunity is.
So it's interesting that you say that, because one of the questions that I get from academic staff, researchers and lecturers who work on a specific research area, there's a brilliant Innovate UK call that come out, but their problem is that they don't have the industry or company contacts. So are there companies that you have contact with, or the knowledge transfer network has contact with, that they can match together with academic staff, if academic staff got in contact with you and said, look, we're really interested in this area, I've got lots of papers published in it, but I just don't know a business that I could work with. Could you match them with a business?
Certainly KTN could. So I it's a whole separate debate, isn't it? But again, it is difficult, because if you're an academic, you tend to be very focused on the research council bits of what UKRI does, and that's a different culture, isn't it? And it's less about business relationships, and it's more about peer review and the networks and your standing within the research community you're working in. Innovate funds doesn't go to academics. What it goes to is businesses. So it should be business driven. So if you're an academic and you don't really fancy working with business, and you're only doing it because, your head of research and enterprise has told you you need to do that, then probably you should think long and hard about going out and slightly begrudgingly try and establish business relationships. It's got to be something that you as an academic see as a benefit to your, to your career and your research interests. And, the Innovation Hub is there to tap into the local business community and local business networks. The KTN can do that nationally. And, it's about, if you're interested in this, putting yourself about, isn't it really? In the way that you've done, is you've worked in industry before, you've maintained those industry contacts. It doesn't feel like Friday I've got to spend time finding some business leads. It's just an integral part of how you're developing your interests currently as an academic. And I think that's by far the better way of going about it. But places like the Innovation Hub, FSB, Chamber of Commerce, people like that, there are networking opportunities locally that I would commend, research colleagues to get involved in if you're interested in developing in that way.
Because on the flip side as well, a lot of businesses are too busy trying to stay in business, and they're not aware of all this funding that's available that could actually help them too.
Yeah, I think you're right. At this time, the evidence we've got is, at any one time, it's probably about 15-20% of companies are actively looking to innovate. But difficulty is you can't predict that, particularly which is the 20% of companies that's about to go into an innovation splurge. Likewise, at the moment, some of the evidence I've seen suggests that about 10% of companies in the current lockdown are using it very consciously to think, okay, what's our strategy going forward? Is this an opportunity for us to spend some time to think about, is this the area we want to be in? Can we diversify? Can we develop a new approach to something? There are many companies will be, just leave me alone because I'm just figuring out how on earth I survive this. And I've got more important conversations to have with my bank manager than with you. But others will say, oh, that's interesting because, I was just thinking about, can I use this product to do something else? And, having some expert knowledge from outside to help me. So these, keeping those networks and an element of being opportunistic, I think. So
I've had a few queries recently of companies. That is that query, Julian. And the second question they ask is, what's the average success for an Innovate UK bid?
It varies enormously.
Yeah.
So some of the more specialist calls, it's probably above 50-50. For the open call, if you take the data from the de minimis call, which is just sort of a vast microcosm, we had 8,500 applications and we awarded 800 grants. So the open call is by far the most competitive. Some of the more specialist niche calls, you know, there probably is quite a small community doing agri-robotics and they all know each other, and, you know, you'll have your own assessment. Obviously, probably the best call is for a knowledge transfer partnership, because there Cameron will take you through the process, and we actively work with you to get to a stage where all parties are happy with that. So when it goes to application, that's a very high 85% success rate, isn't it?
I can't see any questions in the chatting thingy. Will, do you have any other questions?
No,
I didn't
that's
plan
fine.
it this way, by the way.
No, that's fine from me. I mean, I just wanted, you know, the things that I wanted to know is how do staff, particularly early career researchers, get in contact and get involved in business projects, and that's usually through the Innovation Hub and the Knowledge Transfer Network. Where do we find examples of projects that have been successful? And so there's an actual record of them on the Innovate UK website.
Yeah, in our transparency data. And also, if you follow our blogs, then quite often the innovation champs for particular areas will focus on a you know, company that we've supported.
Mm-hmm. And also, where do we find out where the new calls are coming from and what exciting stuff is happening in the coming year? So those were the three things I'm particularly interested in.
And again, our pages of gov.uk, follow the blogs, get email alerts from us, from KTN, you know, the growth hubs as well, Business Gateway in Leicestershire. They usually take our content as well. So hopefully, if I'm doing my job all right, then it should be relatively easy to find funding opportunities and support opportunities from Innovate. Whether it's easy to get the money, can't make any promises on that, but hopefully it is easy enough to find where the opportunities are.
Sorry, Julian, so I've got a few messages coming now. Yep. Jamie is asking, will the application process be streamlined in the future?
Yes, I mean, we've learned a lot from doing the fast call, and what it's done is accelerated our business transformation process. So yes, I would be very disappointed if we go back to the pre-COVID days of us spending 6 months looking at something when we've proved that we can get the money out of the door in about 2.5. Obviously, there are some issues, because if we find that we've suddenly have a 50% fraud rate rather than the 1% fraud rate, then people in Treasury might get worried about. But assuming that we can manage the risk, then I hope that we would accelerate the process. For an innovation agency, if you look under our bonnet, then we are quite manual and not terribly innovative in the way we run some of these processes. And I think there's a real enthusiasm to look and see how we can do it better.
Oh, we've lost your sound, Arno.
Really?
Oh, there we go, you're back.
Okay. So, well, and looks like if there is a bit of noise in the background, but thank you very much, Julian and Will, for your time.
Pleasure.
Any questions, like for the previous session, if anybody in the amongst the delegates have any question, can they either send them to us or send them to you directly, Julian, or Will, for you to respond? Are you happy with that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yep. More than happy to continue the conversation.
Right. With anything regarding KTP, then so I'm speaking to the audience. Then speak directly to me and Benoit and I. Sorry, I see that message from Andrew, a bit of self-promotion. She's saying in the chatting bot that in the last call for KTP we had here at Leicester University, we had 100% success rate. So here we go. Yeah, Julian and Will, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And the next session will be a talk by Carmine Maffei and Paul Bhatia.
Our first talk this afternoon is entitled Funding for Space-Enabled Technology to Tackle COVID-19. And the talk will be delivered by Carmine Maffei, our Earth Observation Innovation Fellow, and Paul Bhatia, ESA Business Applications Ambassador, who are both online.
Okay, thank you for the introductions, and I think that I'll go ahead directly with the presentation then at this point and be ready for the question and answers soon after. So welcome, and the first point is really about space and health. Where is the connection? Well, those that already attended some of my presentations know that I fostered a lot the fact that space technologies are already invisibly into our life and also into our businesses, actually. And being a little bit provocative, earlier this week on LinkedIn, I said, okay, if you are not actively exploiting space technologies in your business, your competitors probably are. And this is relevant. So while pushing this idea that space technologies are into our lives, I used the example of the mobile and a number of technologies into the mobiles that are actually related to space. But being even more provocative, I used the example of space technologies in a package of crisps, because there are so many technologies about crop monitoring, the packaging, the management of the cattle. I mean, the companies that were able to use these technologies actually took a competitive advantage. But what about health? Well, the point is, when we think about space technologies, we all think about a number of value chains, which are those that are typically looked by experts, sector experts. But if we think carefully among these value chains, there are a few that we can relate directly to the quality of life and to health, either directly or indirectly, like in the case of insurance, indeed. Because, of course, if you are exposed to pollution, your health would suffer, for instance. And the same, monitoring how a city, urban environment works. This is also very relevant to how this determines our well-being. And Earth observation is not the only technology that can be used for monitoring, for providing services, health-related services. Think of human space flight, and think of all the security, the food security procedures that are taken into the packaging or in food preparation. Most of them were developed in the 60s and 70s by NASA, and now they are translated into everyday operations and food processing worldwide. But also think of communication, satellite communication, so the fact that you can reach out remote areas and provide health services remotely. Satellite navigation, Earth observation, space weather. Well, space weather possibly it is a little bit more complicated, but I give you an example, a project where the university has been actively working recently and is already working in cooperation with the Leicester hospitals and AirSense, a quickly growing, scaling up startup here in Leicester. Well, this project was funded by NHS, the European Space Agency, and the UK Space Agency to develop an app that provides advices, training advices, or to people, taking into account air pollution. Let's say that you have a sort of illness and you are recommended to walk half an hour every day for your health. The point is, if that day there is an accumulation of pollutants in the atmosphere, that half an hour can be actually poison to you. And so how can you provide real-time advice on whether to walk or not relating to your specific disease? Well, this is what the university with its partners is trying at the moment to deliver. And using, in this case, Earth observation to monitor air pollution along with ground sensors. So you see, again, there is a space technology that is being used to deliver a service which is related to health. Clearly, governments are serious about it, and especially now for COVID-19 outbreak, there is a lot there are a lot of activities going on right now. The UK Space Agency has launched a permanent website with survey and wealth of information about COVID and how to help businesses and what are the opportunities for businesses with good ideas to deliver new products and services that are now even more relevant to governments and to health organizations. Catapult Satellite Applications is delivering a series of webinars on COVID-19 on a fortnight basis. The UK and the Italian governments actually launched invitation to tenders along with the European Space Agency to try to solve for a number of thematic solutions that are relevant to them. And there is even by the European Space Agency an open call, a permanent open call that is now devoted to addressing COVID-19. There is funding from UK ERI, and there are the European Copernicus and Galileo programs with their wealth of services, which are now being refocused around COVID-19, especially also the forthcoming competitions for ideas. And finally, even NASA actually launched a Space Up COVID-19 challenge, open to everyone, to try to exploit the opportunities provided by space data. And by the way, they are also tackling European satellite sources. So, if governments are serious about it, what are the opportunities? And if you could talk to a space agency, would you do so? And would it be simple to approach a space agency? Well, I do think that it is quite simple because Paul Bhatia represents the European Space Agency with us right now. Paul, I would give voice to you now.
Okay, hello everybody, and thanks Carmine. As Carmine mentioned, I'm Paul Bhatia. I'm the new regional ambassador for the Midlands and North East as part of the ESA Business Applications programme hosted by the University of Nottingham. Some of you may remember or have met Kavita Mutu. So she was the regional ambassador up until the end of April, and I started from the 1st of May. So Carmine is very well introduced the technologies and some of the funding that's available. I'll talk a little bit more just about the ambassador network, what we do, just a very brief introduction to the program and some of the funding that's available. So if you move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is the ambassador platform network for business applications space solutions. For those of you who need a reminder what business applications is, it's a very big funding program from the European Space Agency that the UK Space Agency, the UK subscribed to, and there's project funding that's available from about 60,000 euros up to about 3 million euros per project. We're busy kind of trying to promote this program and assist people in putting very good proposals forward. The proposals have to incorporate some form of space derived data or space technology, one form of space technology or data. So you can see the network. The regional ambassadors are on the right hand side. You can see me there. I'm covering quite a big area of the Midlands and North East, working very closely with Leicester, Nottingham, Durham and Leeds in particular, but covering the whole area. And in other areas there are other ambassadors available as well. And in the centre, the network is coordinated by Ian Downey, and Victoria Christmas is a central member of the team who can also assist in putting proposals together. So next slide, please. So in terms of the funding that's available, there are 3 parts to the Space Solutions Programme. In the top right-hand corner, you can see the business incubation part, which is to do with companies starting up, and you can get a grant of about £50,000 as well as an office in a business incubator as part of that. And on the right-hand side there at the top, you can see the technology transfer element, which is smaller at about 10k, but can go up to 50k as well. The business application funding, as I said, the project size could start from 80,000 euros for Kickstarters, which are normally launched as invitation to tenders, with a 75% funding intervention rate, which means that you get a flat rate payment of 60,000 euros for a small project, maybe 6 months in duration. Feasibility studies, generally 9 to 12 months to get to a proof of concept and an initial business plan. and a demonstration project which is, you know, ultimately something which is very close to market. So on the right hand side, as I said, the open competitions are ITTs, come on ESA remits, and ESA release ITTs, and you respond to those, and direct negotiations, you can approach ESA directly, and the best way to do that is to come through me. So so hopefully that gives you a bit more information on that. If you go to the next slide. So this is, we're specifically talking about COVID-19 related funding. So there is a big push from the UK Space Agency, the European Space Agency, to get kind of space utilised to kind of support us as we're going through this pandemic and coming out of this pandemic to support pandemics in the future. So if you're interested in any of these calls, then do let me know. Carmine has mentioned Space Helping UK on COVID-19 and other pandemics in collaboration with the UK Space Agency. There's a very special application process to that, which is fast track. It's all about reducing stress on the health sector and supporting the health sector. It's continuously open until 15th of October 2020. They want to fast track these projects or fund them quickly if it's within scope, and they want to see some kind of impact after about 3 months of the project starting. Space in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, again, Carmine mentioned this in collaboration with the Italian government to support communities in Italy. This is an open call until the end of December. The next one, space-based services applications addressing COVID-19. These is an open call from ESA, which is focused on healthcare. Again, it's the UK Space Agency is supporting this very closely, and this is all about demonstration projects. So there's big projects that we talk about, and this call is open until the end of November. They may be extended as well. It all depends. There has been a lot of interest in these calls, as you'd expect, and a lot of work going on that. So any element of telehealth using GNSS, using Earth observation, using space technology, using SATCOMs. And then the one that's opening later in June is a path to post-COVID recovery. That's for those smaller projects that we were talking about 250,000 euros feasibility studies. And that's opening on the 19th of January, closing currently at the end of August. It may be extended with an upcoming webinar on 3rd of June. I can provide more details if you're interested, or you can get those details from the business.esa.int website. So next slide. So Carmine also mentioned the Galileo Masters and the Copernicus Masters. The Galileo Masters is going ahead this year. That's a ideas competition and a business plan competition for ideas that are specifically using satellite navigation, GNSS, Galileo, the European GNSS system, the European satellite navigation system. So we hear a lot about tracking and tracing apps, contact tracing apps. There's a lot of contact tracing apps there that are obviously using satellite positioning to locate the person, and then different ways of communicating that information. But obviously within Google Maps and Apple Maps, a lot of that location information exists already. So within the Galileo Masters this year, they're talking about encouraging people to take the COVID crisis into account. And there's a number of partner challenges that are open. You can see some of those on the left-hand side, I hope. And particular one there, which is the GSA Space for Being Safe and Healthy Challenge. If you're interested in that, I can tell you more about this competition if you're interested as well. There's a huge prize pool, 750,000 euros. The competition's open now, and it closes on June the 30th. Next slide, please. Next. So yeah, so thank you very much. I mean, I wanted to, and thanks to the team for allowing me to have this opportunity to introduce myself and to very quickly identify these funding calls that are open, these opportunities that are open specifically around supporting kind of, you know, in this current crisis. Main thing is that I'm here. Please contact me directly. There'll be more events coming up that I'll be speaking at, but the main thing is to kind of talk to you directly if you have an idea or an interest in applying for any of these opportunities. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Paul, and I'm sure you are staying with us with question and answers with the public. And of course, we are happy to welcome you again, and we are indeed discussing for another Innovation Friday event in the future.
That'd be excellent. Thank you.
And so instead of my side, I talk a little bit about Copernicus Masters, where Copernicus is a flagship program of the European Union for monitoring the environment and providing services for the security of citizens. And it is delivered across a number of thematic areas, so atmosphere, maritime environment, land monitoring, climate change, security, and there is also an emergency management component which is activated by civil protection agencies on specific emergencies where all the satellites are pointed on a specific location to monitor it. Why it is relevant to the businesses? Well, it has been demonstrated first, an economic growth which is enabled by space technologies because they enable innovation and new products and services, or the improvement of existing services. This, in the latest report about Copernicus, the expected average annual growth rate enabled by the program is 15%. If you compare it to the 1, 2, or 3% of typical economic growth of the economy, you see that it is a growth which is quicker than the average. And this is really relevant. And of course, it is not uniform across all value chains. There are some value chains that where the growth is quicker, other sectors where the growth is yet to be developed. And there are also areas at market failure, of course, response to natural disaster. I mean, you are not trying to gain for it, and so every expenditure, and the same is also from security indeed. The access, Copernicus, the nice thing about Copernicus is that all the data, the satellite data, the ground data, and all the maps being produced about air quality, atmosphere, land, etc., they are all open and free as a policy, and will be ever the case. So across a number of agencies, you can access this data and use it into your business to develop products and services, or to build intelligence, or whatever it is needed for you to enable your growth. The University of Leicester is contributing a lot to the program because it contributes to the design of satellites and sensors. It contributes to the development of land and atmospheric monitoring services. But we also host a Copernicus Relay, which is a focal point where we try to support businesses locally to use Copernicus resources. Not only, we are also part of a network through the Coordinate project, a network across several European countries, so we can create opportunities of collaboration across the network. And actually, the network is at the moment delivering a number of activities, and you can just check the Coordinate website and find information about what they are trying to enable into local businesses. And finally, the Copernicus Masters competition, and there are several prizes across several thematic areas. Yet, the most important thing is now everyone is really encouraging the development of solutions that take into account the COVID-19 emergency, and they really look forward new ideas to tackle the pandemic and support the population and health services. So the point is, you have a bright idea and you would like to do something. How? Of course, as a university, we are open to collaborations with businesses, and we understand that innovation can be risky because it means a sort of investment in something where the opportunity of revenue might be slow to come, or might be the project might not be successful, or whatever. So in this case, as a university, we are trying to focus a lot on space technologies through the Space Park program, which is an idea which is actually the groundbreaking was earlier in January this year with representatives from the governments. And within the umbrella of Space Park, we are trying to bring together research, innovation, and businesses in creating what we call collaboratories. Places where we really want to work together with businesses and facilitate the uptake of space technologies. And On the point of de-risking it, we have partnered with a number of organizations to ensure that there are resources so that you can tap into university talents, and it is heavily subsidized, is not totally free, depending on the scheme and the eligibility. Indeed, we have a wide offer, either alone or in partnership with other partners, of which also Paul Bhatia is one of them, into the network. And Innovate UK, we had the presentation from Julian Bowrey earlier today. And there are solutions that are relevant to startups, to growing SMEs, and also to established companies across a number of things, which is about hosting, as we have hosting space at the Innovation Hub, and later on at Space Park Leicester. We provide coaching. We are happy to work together towards access to grants. We provide innovation support. You can outsource some bits of activity to us, and we work to you on its development. And of course, we can also support on recruitment, because you can tap into our students, or you can just ask for a student project to deliver something on an experimental activity that is delivered by a student, and then you get the solution and try to understand whether it works or not through students. So I think me and Paul tried to make sure that the message is space technologies are really everywhere and are really relevant to this moment and COVID. There is really a strong push in trying to identify solutions that also take into account space technologies that are enabled by space technologies. So if you think you are not related to space, think twice, and of course, try to talk with us. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carmine and Paul. So now we'll open the Q&A session. Is Paul still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay. So I don't know if you can see some questions are starting to pop up in the meeting chat. The first one was actually from me. Where can I access Copernicus data? Where can UK companies access Copernicus rules? I think you might have answered that already in your talk, but
well, it is the point is to make it clear that for Copernicus, the data is totally open and free to everyone. There is another level which is about access to bids under the Copernicus, or participation to other activities like Copernicus Masters. So at the moment, Copernicus Masters is open worldwide as well, and even companies that are from outside the EU can apply. As we are an associated country with the program, so we are able to support and participate to and promote the activity of Copernicus Masters. Other activities instead at the moment are under discussion, but there is a huge commitment of the government on this, on being part of the Copernicus program, and there is a web page devoted to this. Instead, for Galileo, I would really ask Paul if he can provide some advice on this.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah. Okay, so in terms of that, I mean, it's very easy. Well, I say it's very easy, but there is a Copernicus data hub. So you go to the Copernicus data hub, and then you can access different tools and different forms of information from there. They have actually very recently launched, I say recently, about a month or two ago, also launched something called the Copernicus MOOC, massive online course. So you can do that. It's compulsory, I think, to get the certificate. You have to sit an exam. There's about 9 hours training, but you can dip in and out of that, and it gives you lots of kind of ideas about where to access information, how to access certain things like that. So obviously we'll try and help if you've got specific information, but if you go to the Copernicus Open Hub, you can navigate through the information there, and it's reasonably straightforward. For Galileo's European's satellite navigation system. Most people, well, everybody kind of knows GPS now. It's the standard term for satellite navigation. GPS and Galileo are constellations of satellites in medium Earth orbits, about 20,000 kilometers away, beam signals down to the Earth, and your phone picks up those signals and computes a position based on that, and puts that position onto a map or uses it within an application. So it's an open signal that you can access. Things have got better in terms of that, in that now in Android phones at least, you have access to the raw GNSS signals, whereas previously you could only get a position. What does that mean? That means that instead of just taking a position from the phone and whatever the accuracy of that position is now, if you want to and you have the ability to do that, you can access APIs that allow you to actually use the raw data and get a more precise signal from the phone. So there's a lot of work going on in that area. But if you want to know more, then get in touch. That's the main thing. Okay, so first thing is, do you have some useful links and resources that we could circulate, you know, as a post-event notes, with some post-event notes to all our attendees here, registrants? Yeah, I mean, type in the Copernicus Hub, Copernicus EU. It's very easy to find if you do a web search. But I'll put the link in into the thing. Great. And the other question is, so if I understand correctly, you can use this data to build, for example, build a new service, a commercial service potentially.
Yes, that's correct.
So there's no, as soon as it becomes commercial, there's no sort of restrictions, or is it?
No restrictions and no fees to pay.
Wonderful. Right, thank you. So next question is from Pascal Baudevin. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Pascal is saying, I work for a, sorry, I've just lost that question. I work for a ERDF project in Shrewsbury, where we support local businesses to access new technology. We have a geospatial group and lots of interest in space technology, but there's a lack of skill to understand and process the data. How can we support these companies to access training so that they can embrace new technology? So,
this is interesting. Clearly, there are some. We are open to collaborations, and there are several funding schemes that allow to transfer part of the knowledge through collaboration with other universities. I'm thinking of Sprint program, for instance, which is exactly provides access to a network of 5 universities, including Leicester. And that is not the only approach, I think, because as long as it is about, if it is just a technology transfer, there are several methods. For instance, there are the center studentships, where the company can support a PhD student. It is just a very small fee. It is some £1,000, for instance, and they have access to technology transfer of specific project activities within the PhD program. And other mechanisms might be also collaborative projects where we bid together. And I think there is one other approach which is really relevant to you, Benoit, which is around the KTPs. And these were discussed today. I mean, to facilitate the technology transfer, there are several mechanisms. When it is instead about upskilling, I mean, several universities are able to provide continued professional development courses. So this is also another mechanism that they can be using. Paul, any other idea on your side?
I think it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, my job at the University of Nottingham is as General Manager of GRACE, which is the Geospatial and GNSS Research Applications Centre of Excellence. So we were kind of established about 11 years ago at the University of Nottingham to provide support and assistance to companies and organisations that want to exploit GNSS, and we've kind of opened that up into geospatial technologies. So we have similar schemes that Carmine has mentioned. For engagement as part of this role as the ambassador for the ESA Business Applications. My remit is to spread the word about the program and to help people in the first stage of application. So part of that role, I'm quite happy to come to places like Shrewsbury or whatever. Well, once the lockdown opens, but obviously everything remotely and digitally in webinars and these kind of things. I'm quite happy to present, you know, about the opportunities and then engage with people who are interested in moving that forward. Does that help? If you want a more detailed answer, I can give a more detailed answer.
Well, I guess you've left your details in the meeting chat, so I guess Pascal can contact you directly. So thank you for the question, Pascal. The next question has come by email. Arno's posted it. How can I identify the right expertise in space industries, presumably within the university?
Oh, okay. I think that as a university, actually, we operate the Innovation Hub, which is a sort of entry point. So you talk with one of us. I'm the Innovation Fellow for Earth Observation, and I'm not the only one. We have experts in data analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, which is our colleague Ayo. There is Shannon that works with engineering, manufacturing, and materials. Tobias that works with the School of Business. And so we have our internal networks of academics. So we collect inquiries, we talk we identify the need of the company and put in touch the company with the right academic, bring them to the same table. And as we are sector experts, of course, we are able to talk both languages, the language of the company and the language of the academia.
Okay, and the next question sort of flows on from that. Could you give an example of how the Innovation Hub could help start a new idea project? And actually, whilst we were talking, I was trying to think of an example of a COVID-related project. So I don't know if you could perhaps give us sort of an example of a COVID-type related project and how the Innovation Hub might be able to help.
Well, we didn't have a proper inquiry on COVID-related projects yet, but that project that I presented on air quality is actually closely related on it, because the project was stemmed exactly from pulmonary diseases and diabetes as well, because pollution has an effect also on diabetes. And in that case, the idea was to develop a solution for end user, for citizens essentially. But it is not the only one. We had an inquiry from another company that delivers services around pollution, and they are trying to connect pollution data to other health parameters which are beyond diabetes and beyond pulmonary diseases. And this inquiry was picked up by an academic, Jeremy Leslie, who is trying to put together machine learning methods to analyze health data and relate them to pollution. Instead, if we talk about wider on how a project idea can become something, can I say, more developed, we have example, for instance, of a company that came us with an idea of a drone for search and rescue activity in remote areas. And we built from scratch the technology with them. Actually, at some point, it became a proper collaboration together. And it was initially an activity under ERDF. So the inquiry is very small scoping project and trying to understand what would be the specification requirements of such a drone. And there, as the idea was something credible, the company applied along with us to the Sprint program, and so that the university could work on their behalf and develop several bits of the wider project.
Okay. So, very good. So a question that came by email: can UK companies access ESA funding? ESA, I assume that stands for European Space Agency. So can UK companies access European Space Agency funding?
Okay, so I rushed through a lot of it because I was aware there was only a small amount of time for the presentation. So the acronym is right. ESA is European Space Agency, and of course UXA is a UK space agency. The European Space Agency is a club akin to the European Union, but it's not the European Union. It's something separate. You will have seen from my slides, if you're looking at the strip of flags at the bottom, the Canadian flag was there, and the Swiss flag was there, and Swiss Europe, but not necessarily engaged so much in European Union. So so it's not the EC. So yes, the UK can access ESA funding. How it works is that there's a core program that every member state of ESA contributes to, and that money then it's like a geo return. So if the UK, whatever they're putting into the program, the industry can bid into the open projects. It will say in the letter of invitation for that particular project which countries are eligible, which are not. There'll be some special provisions that are written in the call for proposals. So the simple question is, yes, we can access that money. It will still be there, and we'll still be able to access it after 31st of December, after we come out of Europe, if we do come out of Europe, because it's something separate. But there are certain programs within the European Space Agency's funding lines that we can't access. And also, you have to be aware of how much the subscriptions of the member states are. So in things like business applications, the UK's got a huge subscription there. So there's no need to really worry about whether the money is available. But the money has to be approved by the UK Space Agency. So the money that's spent on a particular project has to be approved by the UK Space Agency, and that's part of the application process to get a letter of support from the UK Space Agency, and I'll give you more advice on that. So hopefully that answers the question enough.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. Okay, but that's reassuring. Okay, we've had one question come in from just now from Rasha. I am currently working on an innovation well-being platform focusing on how people can handle loneliness and isolation, and touches a lot on COVID-19 isolation for professionals and uni students. I'm a doctorate student at Leicester Uni Business School. I'd love to discuss this further. May I contact you by email? Well, I guess the answer is yes, certainly.
Definitely.
Does that sound like something that would be relevant to your area?
I think both, actually, Paul.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd be interested in exploring that. Yeah.
Yes, we can share our email addresses, and please just drop us a line and we start a conversation.
Yeah, and Carmine and I, and Nottingham and Leicester, we're all working very closely together on these elements of business engagement. So we complement each other in terms of our technical expertise, and we'll kind of put you through to the relevant expert if it's not something that we can assist or answer.
Yes, so she's asking to share us the email. Yes, we will share them in the chat, definitely.
I think I already done mine, didn't I? Did I?
You have, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so it sounds like that could be relevant to social sciences as well. So as Carmine and Paul say, if you contact them in the first case, they can always bring in other colleagues from other parts of the university. Yeah, wonderful.
Well, indeed, one of the themes that were proposed for the COVID-19 under the ESA bids funded by UK Space Agency and Italian Space Agency was exactly about distance learning, for instance. I mean, there is always a scope also for social applications, social science applications, definitely.
Oh, right. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for your presentations, both. It's been very useful, very insightful.